Can you imagine a silence so heavy it feels like it could crush you? That's exactly what blanketed Kingsley's, Manhattan's swankiest restaurant. When every eye locked onto a tiny clearing between the tables, conversations died, forks hung in the air, and there was 10-year-old Lucas Montgomery, trembling like a leaf. His legs, bound by cold metal braces, wobbled as he stretched a shaky hand toward Diana Johnson, the only black waitress in the place. A soft piano melody had just started, and Lucas, out of nowhere, decided he wanted to dance. Can you believe it? A boy with such courage. Sir, control your son. Manager Thornton's voice sliced through the quiet like a knife. This isn't a dance hall. And our staff isn't here to babysit kids. Richard Montgomery, the billionaire behind Montgomery Investments, one of America's richest men, felt his throat tighten. This was the first time he dared to bring Lucas out to dine in public since the accident that stole the strength from his son's legs 2 years ago. A mistake, he thought bitterly, one he'd never make again. Lucas, sit down, he ordered, his voice low but as firm as steel. Diana stood frozen, her eyes darting between the fuming manager, the imposing billionaire, and the boy whose hand still hovered, hopeful, in the air. 5 years at Kingsley's had taught her to fade into the background, especially around men like Montgomery. But then, with a calm that stunned everyone, she spoke. Mr. Thornton, my shift's done. I'm leaving. She untied her apron, set it on a tray, and, oh, what a moment, smiled at Lucas, taking his hand. I can't dance in an apron. Now, can I? Richard shot to his feet. What do you think you're doing? He demanded. Diana met his stare, unflinching. I'm accepting an invitation, sir. Before anyone could stop them, Lucas took a shaky step. His foot scraped the floor, the braces screeching painfully. But Diana? She didn't rush him or pull him along. She matched his pace, step for agonizing step. She's so fired tomorrow, a woman at a nearby table hissed. Richard stood there, rooted, as a memory hit him like a tidal wave, his late wife, Elizabeth, twirling Lucas in their living room. It's not about perfection, she'd said, her voice soft and warm. It's about connection. As Diana moved with Lucas's clumsy steps, something shifted in the boy's eyes. Fear melted into focus. Shame blossomed into quiet pride. For the first time since that awful accident, Lucas wasn't being pushed or fixed. He was leading. Can you imagine the power of that moment? Mr. Montgomery, Thornton's voice broke in, dripping with false assurance. This won't happen again. She'll be dealt with. Richard didn't answer. The whole restaurant held its breath, waiting for the billionaire's verdict. A man like him could ruin a life with a single word. Waiters froze. Diners gawked. But all Richard could hear was Lucas's smile, brighter than any sound in the room. After 3 small steps, Diana guided Lucas back to his seat. Thank you for asking me to dance, she said, her tone formal, like she was addressing a grown man. It was an honor. As she turned to leave, Richard's voice stopped her. Wait, it was different, softer, almost foreign to his own ears. What's your full name? Diana Johnson, sir, she replied. He nodded, as if carving her name into his memory. Then, pulling a card from his jacket, he held it out. My office. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. The room seemed to gasp as one. What was happening? Diana took the card, her face calm but her fingers trembling just a bit. Dad, Lucas called as she walked away. Why'd you do that? His words hung heavy, like a challenge. Richard looked at his son and, for a fleeting second, saw not just the boy Elizabeth had entrusted to him, but a whole person, one he'd neglected for 2 years. Too wrapped in his own grief. Dinner dragged on in tense silence. But no one caught Diana's parting glance. Not fearful or defeated, but burning with a quiet resolve that clashed with the storm in Richard's eyes. The next morning, Montgomery Tower's lobby gleamed with glass and marble, soaking up the sunlight. Diana, in her best navy skirt and white blouse, bought on clearance, felt like an outsider. Everyone around her wore outfits worth more than her rent. Diana Johnson to see Mr. Montgomery, she told the receptionist, who sized her up coldly before making a call. 18th floor. Miss Winters will meet you. In the elevator, Diana clutched her worn purse. Taking a deep breath, was she scared? No way. It was determination, forged from tougher times than this. Miss Winters, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s, greeted her with perfect posture. Mr. Montgomery's on a call. Follow me. As they walked through mirrored halls, Diana felt the weight of curious stares. A black woman in the executive wing? That was rare enough to spark whispers. He got you fired, didn't he? Winters asked abruptly in a waiting room. It happens. Big shots like him make a call. And people like you are out. People like me? Diana raised an eyebrow. What's that supposed to mean? Winters adjusted her glasses. Employees who don't know their place. Diana's smile was sharp, humorless. And where's that, exactly? Before Winters could reply, her phone buzzed. He's ready for you. Richard's office was massive, half a floor with windows framing Manhattan like a toy city. He stood, staring out as if he owned it all. Mr. Montgomery, Diana said formally. He turned, his face a mask of control. Miss Johnson, thank you for coming. He gestured to a chair. Please. The silence that followed was deliberate, the kind meant to make people squirm. Diana saw right through it. Do you have a background? Richard asked at last. Excuse me? Education. College. Her gaze never wavered. Bachelor's in Child Development from NYU. Incomplete Master's in Special Education. A flicker crossed Richard's face. Surprise? And you're a waitress? I work 3 jobs. Diana corrected. The restaurant, a bookstore on weekends, and tutoring when I can. Richard picked up a folder from his desk. I looked into you, Miss Johnson. I wanted to know who. He paused. Danced with my son. He opened it, revealing photos of a community center. Freedom Steps. You started that 6 years ago. Diana sat taller. Co-founded it with my sister, Zoe. It's a dance program for kids with physical disabilities. Richard flipped through papers. And it's about to shut down for lack of funds. Diana didn't blink. Of course he'd dig that up overnight. I'm not here to beg for money. Mr. Montgomery. Then why are you here? Because you asked me to come. He let out a dry laugh. Fair enough. Restless. He stood. I want you to work for me. Diana blinked, stunned. As a waitress at your house? His face tightened. As a therapeutic companion for Lucas. Saying his son's name seemed to cost him. Diana noticed his eyes drift to a photo. A smiling woman cradling a baby. I've got the best specialists. Richard went on. Therapists, neurologists, psychologists. But what you did yesterday? He faltered, like the words were fighting him. It was just a dance. Diana said. It was the first time he's smiled since the accident. The confession sounded raw, painful. I don't need a dancer. I need someone who can do what you did. Follow, not lead. Diana studied him, behind the power and polish. She saw it, a father. Lost and desperate. I'll pay you 5 times what you make now. She stood. No. Richard looked floored, unaccustomed to refusal. I don't work for people who see my color or class before my skills. She said evenly. And I won't work for someone trying to buy fixes for emotional wounds. His face reddened. You're throwing away a solution to your money problems for pride? For dignity. Diana shot back. And because Lucas deserves better than someone paid to fake caring. She headed for the door. Then paused. Lucas doesn't need more experts. He needs room to lead his own life. You don't know my son. No, she admitted. But I know kids like him. People whose physical limits are nothing next to the cages we trap them in. She set a card on his desk. Freedom Steps. Tuesdays and Thursdays. 4 p.m. Bring Lucas. First class is free. As she passed Winters, the woman gaped. You turned down Richard Montgomery? Are you nuts? Diana smiled. Maybe, but I'd rather be nuts than owned. What a moment of defiance. As Diana strode past Miss Winters, who'd clearly been eavesdropping, the woman's jaw practically hit the floor. You just turned down Richard Montgomery's offer? She hissed, eyes wide with disbelief. Are you out of your mind? Diana's smile was sharp, defiant. Maybe I am, she shot back. But I'd rather be crazy than someone's property. Wouldn't you? Her heart pounded with the thrill of standing her ground. A fire in her chest that no billionaire could extinguish. The next Wednesday, Diana was at the Freedom Steps Community Center, sorting papers at the reception desk, when her sister Zoe burst in, eyes sparkling with excitement. There's a Bentley outside, she whispered, nervously tugging at her hijab. Guess who's in it? You won't believe this. Diana peered through the window. And there it was, a sleek, gleaming car that screamed wealth. Lucas sat in the back, his face pressed against the glass, anxiety and hope warring in his eyes. Richard, though, stayed glued to the driver's seat, hands gripping the wheel like he was wrestling with himself. Would he really step out? He's not coming in, Zoe said, shaking her head. Guys like him don't set foot in places like this. No way. Diana's lips curved into a knowing smile. Lucas's determined gaze from that dance flashing in her mind. Oh, Zoe. Never underestimate a son who knows what he wants, she said. And then, as if on cue, the car door creaked open. Lucas eased out, carefully adjusting his braces, his movements slow but deliberate. And then, can you believe it? Richard stepped out too. Looking utterly out of place in his designer casual pants and sweater. Privilege still clung to him like a second skin. But he was here. Told you he'd show, Diana murmured, almost to herself. Zoe gaped. What did you do, Diana? But Diana just smiled, her eyes glinting with a secret even her sister didn't fully grasp. In her cramped Bronx apartment, tucked under her bed, was a worn notebook bursting with years of notes, observations about kids like Lucas, men like Richard, and a plan that had sparked the moment she accepted a boys' dance invitation. Richard Montgomery, with his glass towers and bottomless bank accounts, had no idea who he was dealing with. Diana wasn't just a waitress who'd humored his son. She was a woman on a mission, and his world of isolation and power was about to crash headlong into a truth he couldn't buy. Some lessons in life? They had to be lived. Freedom Steps hummed inside an old warehouse, its walls alive with handmade posters shouting, "Your rhythm, your rules, and every move counts." As Richard and Lucas stepped inside, kids with all sorts of mobility devices moved freely to a gentle beat, their joy filling the air. Diana approached, her simple program logo shirt a stark contrast to Richard's polished look. "Mr. Montgomery, welcome," she said, her voice warm but steady. Lucas's eyes widened, drinking in the scene. A girl in a wheelchair spun in perfect circles. A boy with a prosthetic leg crafted a sequence of steps. "This looks like chaos," Richard muttered, shifting uncomfortably. "It's structured," Diana replied coolly. "Just not the kind you're used to. See the difference?" She turned to Lucas, her smile softening. "Want to join them?" Lucas nodded eagerly but glanced at his dad, hesitating. "Go ahead," Richard said, his voice tight. "I'll be right here." As Diana led Lucas to the group, Zoe slid up to Richard with a chair. "First day's always the toughest," she said gently. "For parents, not the kids. Trust me." Richard bristled. "This isn't therapy. I've got the best specialists money can buy." Zoe's eyes were kind but piercing. "And how's that working out for Lucas?" "Really?" Before he could snap back, the studio door swung open, and in walked a woman with gray hair in elegant braids, leaning on a carved cane that radiated authority. "Dr. Elaine Mercer," Zoe whispered to Richard, "neuroscientist, brain plasticity expert, retired from Harvard. She's a big deal." Dr. Mercer greeted the kids with warmth, then spotted Richard. "Mr. Montgomery," she said, her tone sharp, "you've rejected my research proposals 3 times in 2 years. Remember?" Richard blinked, caught off guard. "Dr. Mercer? I didn't expect you here. I run the research program," she said, unfazed. "We're studying how free movement rewires the brain in kids with motor challenges." "Groundbreaking stuff." Richard frowned, confused. "Research? I thought this was just some community dance class." Diana returned, leaving Lucas to explore with another child. "Freedom Steps is a pilot rehab program," she explained, her voice steady. "We blend adaptive dance with neuroscience. It's about letting kids move on their own terms." "Powerful, right?" Richard's brow furrowed. "Then why are you waitressing if you're running this?" "Because we're broke," Diana said bluntly. "And because folks like you shot us down 3 times. Sound familiar?" The realization hit Richard like a brick. "You were Mercer's assistant on those proposals." "Co-author," Dr. Mercer corrected, her voice firm. "Diana's master's is incomplete. She left school to care for her sister, but her work? It's revolutionary." Richard's eyes narrowed at Diana. "You knew who I was at the restaurant, didn't you? From the second you walked in," she admitted. "And when Lucas stood to dance, I saw a chance to show you what we do. Not just tell you." "Smart move." "Huh?" Richard's voice hardened. "Was the dance staged?" "No way," Diana said fiercely. "Lucas chose to stand. I chose to follow. That's it." Suddenly, reporters flooded the studio, cameras in tow. Richard tensed, his face like stone. "What's this?" he demanded. Diana's smile was sly. "Part 2 of the plan." Zoe handed him a fresh article, Revolutionary rehab method shows stunning results. Dr. Mercer chimed in. We published our first findings today and called the press. Big moment. Richard's voice turned icy. You used my son for a PR stunt? Diana didn't flinch. She led him to a side room, where walls were covered with photos of kids, each paired with handwritten progress notes. One wall held an empty frame. What's that? Richard asked. Our future, Diana said, eyes blazing. A real rehab center, helping 500 kids a year. Not 50. That's the dream. You planned this whole thing. Richard muttered, piecing it together. The dance, the meeting, dragging me here on press day. I saw an opening and took it. Diana said, unapologetic. 4 months ago, you canceled our meeting without even reading our proposal. I swore I'd find a way to make you listen. Zoe's voice cut in. Urgent. Diana, it's Lucas. They hurried back. Lucas stood in the room's center. Kids circling him, music off, everyone silent. He'd removed one brace and was balancing on a single support. Lucas, Richard lunged, but Diana grabbed his arm. Wait, she whispered, just watch. Lucas took a deep breath, his face pure focus. Then, to everyone's astonishment, especially Richard's, he took a full step. Shaky but all his own. The kids erupted in cheers. Camera flashes popping like fireworks. Richard's usually stoic face cracked, tears shimmering in his eyes. Can you imagine a father's heart in that moment? That's why we built Freedom Steps. Diana said softly. It's not about perfect steps. It's about first steps, taken alone. Richard stared at his son, not as a problem to fix but as a person finding his strength. You didn't have to manipulate me for this, he said, voice low. Maybe not, Diana replied. If you'd answered our calls or read our proposals even once. The reporters zeroed in on Richard, murmurs rising as Lucas, lost in his focus, kept practicing his step. Richard was trapped, walk away angry, proving he was the cold tycoon everyone thought, or lean into the moment his son had created. Power had always been his weapon, but now, it couldn't help. Humility wasn't his style, but seeing Lucas's transformation, something in him shattered. Would he keep calling the shots? Or learn to follow? Facing the reporters, Richard felt the weight of their eyes. Lucas had just taken a step alone. Cameras capturing it all, and Diana had masterminded this moment. Mr. Montgomery, a reporter pressed, why are you at Freedom Steps? Did your foundation really reject this program 3 times? Richard glanced at Lucas, still practicing, unaware of the tension. Then, to everyone's shock, especially Diana's, he smiled. Know what's toughest for someone like me, he said, loud enough for all to hear. Admitting we're wrong. The room went silent. The Montgomery Foundation will fully fund Freedom Steps for 5 years and build a permanent rehab center based on Dr. Mercer and Ms. Johnson's work. Flashes exploded. Zoe gasped, and Diana froze. One condition, he added, eyeing her. Ms. Johnson keeps full control. No corporate meddling. Deal? What a turnaround. 3 months later, bulldozers roared, carving out space for the new Freedom Steps Rehabilitation Center. It wasn't the flashiest project the Montgomery Foundation ever backed. But oh, was it groundbreaking. Every corner was shaped by the dreams of kids and their families. Diana was there often, overseeing progress, but never solo. Lucas tagged along, sometimes with other children in tow, his eyes bright with excitement. And, can you believe it? Richard Montgomery himself kept showing up, quietly watching the dream take shape. Who'd have thought a billionaire would care this much? One afternoon, as they pored over blueprints, Diana grinned. I never pegged you for a board meeting guy. Richard rubbed his weary eyes. A scientific article littered with post-it notes in front of him. And I never thought I'd be studying neuroplasticity at 50. But here we are, right? Diana tilted her head, curious. Is this just your public redemption tour? Or do you actually care? Richard's voice softened. Lucas asked to ditch his second brace last week. Yeah, he told me, Diana said. His old therapist swore that was 2 years away. She smirked. But you fired her, remember? You trusted me when I said she was wrong, and she was. Diana pointed to a photo of Lucas, balancing with just one crutch. Beaming. He's outpacing every medical prediction. Richard's tone shifted. Why'd you never accept my apology? Diana's gaze was steady. Because you never gave one. You funneled money, changed policies, funded us, that's compensation. Not, I'm sorry. Richard nodded, almost to himself. Fair point. As always. 6 months later, the center's opening was a world away from that tense restaurant night. The vast, adaptive space buzzed with kids using all kinds of mobility devices, dancing freely. In the main hall, Lucas, now with just a lightweight brace on his left leg, led a choreographed routine with 3 other kids. His steps were limited but brimming with confidence no doctor saw coming. How incredible is that? Richard stood back, watching silently. Diana approached, her voice soft. He doesn't need you to hold him up anymore. No, Richard agreed, but he still needs me nearby. Big difference. Huh? He turned to her, eyes earnest. Thank you, Diana. For what? She asked. Genuinely curious. For teaching me to follow, he said, his voice thick with gratitude. A reporter swooped in. Mr. Montgomery, how's it feel to see Lucas thrive? Richard's gaze settled on his son, now helping a younger girl find her balance. Proud, he said, not just of what he's overcome, but what he's building for others. That's what matters. The reporter pressed on. What's the biggest lesson you've learned? Richard, once known only for his financial empire, faced the camera squarely. Real leaders? They don't drag people down their path. They're brave enough to follow when someone shows a better way. That's the truth. A year later, Freedom Step spread to 3 new cities. Diana snagged the Pediatric Rehabilitation Innovation Award, her methods rippling through hospitals nationwide. Lucas, using just a light cane on tough days, started regular school and became a youth spokesperson, inspiring kids to find their own rhythm. Can you imagine the impact? Richard, though, learned the toughest lesson of all. True power isn't about control, it's knowing when to step back and let others shine. In a world where the mighty rarely budge and the powerless stay hidden. This story, Richard, Diana, Lucas, screams hope. It's about crossing invisible divides. About a billionaire learning from a waitress. A father trailing his son's brave steps. Isn't that what real change looks like?